All right, everybody. Welcome to the Random Roundtable. If I can find the right way to go here. Sharing the screen here with Matt Chatham, three-time Super Bowl champion for your local New England Patriots and you people watching nationwide on Sportscasters. The guy who tackled the streaker in the Super Bowl. So there we go. So welcome, Matt. Welcome to the E2G Sports Network and the Random Roundtable this morning.
Good to be here, John. I'm dressed for it a little bit. I got some cold weather gear on. I'm starting to get prepared for this crazy cold Saturday night thing. This is actually, for Patriots fans out there, this is actually an old starter brand, which clearly hasn't been an NFL thing for like 25 years. We used to have our old equipment guy, Donnie Brosher, and Donnie would end of the year kind of throw the old barrel out and just take in the old stuff you want to. I think I've got like Michael Bishop shorts. I've got some like old Drew Bledsoe like practice jerseys and just random nonsense. I think this was like a Chad Eaton
nice
cold weather thing. So I'm really doing throwbacks today. It is cold out here at my house too. Just got done walking the dog.
Beautiful. First thing I want to ask you, we were just talking about it just before we came on the air, but in all your time in the NFL, you only had to go on the road for the playoffs 3 times.
Yeah.
2 of them were an early kick, this being an 8:15 kick. But in your mind, can you take me back to 2004 traveling to Pittsburgh for a 4:30 game and just kind of like what the day before is like and what the day is? Because they got to kill the day tomorrow in Buffalo. So what are they doing?
Yeah, it's not too unlike, if you play on a good team, if you want a team that the league is promoting and puts on a lot of Monday nights and Sunday nights and the occasional Thursday, I guess, you're kind of used to the late game. So the fact that it's late with other playoff stuff happening prior, I don't think it necessarily registers with you too differently than these normal things. I think what would be odd is if, say, you played in Jacksonville or maybe Arizona. I'm trying to randomly pick a place that doesn't get a lot of primetime games. And all of a sudden you've got this, oh my goodness, I'm playing the night game, on a playoff weekend. It can screw up your time clock if you're not acclimated to it. But the Patriots tend to play so many of these night things. Night and playoffs, obviously the temperature's risen a little bit for the importance of the game. But I just don't think like your daily schedule hits differently necessarily. And we're certainly not in a situation here where you're reliant on something that happens prior in the earlier thing to determine what you're going to be doing. Like your focus is just a million % on the team you're about to play.
Excellent. Yeah. Any fire alarms pulled? Any fun stuff like that?
I always remember hearing those stories. I don't think I ever got woke by one, but in fairness, my wife would attest to this. I will sleep through sort of an earthquake. So you got to violently shake me. So that whole trick about, setting them off to ruin a night's sleep, that doesn't fly with me.
All right. I got some questions regarding this game. Different than most people will hit, but I want to pull out your football mind because it's great. Tremaine Edmonds, is he a guy who can be over aggressive, and can you use that against him?
So I would say the one thing that the Bills have that's so high end, like top couple guys in the league, is not that Tremaine Edmonds solo is the best big Mike, because he's a long, tall, almost Bobby Wagner type guy. But because they play so much sub defense where there's extra defensive back and you're losing a linebacker, it's often just Tremaine and Matt Milano. Like literally, two guys that you see off the ball is in the third is some defensive back that's floating around. The reason they can get away with it and live in that is because Tremaine is so tall and long, yet plays Mike. Like usually Mike linebackers, he's almost built like Matt Judon, but he plays Mike linebacker. It's a different body type than you see at most Mikes. He's kind of Jamie Collins-esque in that he's long and super athletic, is rangy as hell. But to the notion of over aggressiveness, I don't know if he necessarily gets himself out of position, but he's a guy that does a great job of breaking on stuff. So if they're going to be a zone team, they're not so coverage dependent on one thing or the other. But he's a guy who can be moved because he does such a great job of breaking on stuff. You start to stare down the tight end just to free up a little space because you're going to throw a dig behind him or something like that. He can be moved and needs to be moved, quite frankly, because of that ranginess. He'll just reach a foot a little further in each direction than most will, and he'll even get batted balls at the line. So he's a tough one. But I also think that's because he's so good at that. And Milano's the same way, but Milano's not built. Milano's a little stubbier and lighter, but he can really move sideline to sideline because they're sort of uniquely built that way. You can't just let those guys stand where they want to stand and just fly into the line or drop. Play action is that's meaningful, is super important against these guys.
All right. Next question. Devin Singletary's emergence, not emergency, since halftime of the Tampa game, what has that done for this team?
So, every year, I'm blanking on exactly which year this is for Dev, but, he's a guy who at least
Third.
Okay, so rolling back to at least last season when he had started to emerge a little bit, and throughout the course of this year, it's been a weird topic up there. So I do a decent amount of, every time you play the team twice, obviously, and I'll do some crossover stuff with Bill's programs, one form or another. And Devin Singletary is really sort of a hot topic up there because they're very aware that they have a bottom end running game, and that it's a lot of put it all on Josh's shoulders, and thank goodness we got Stephon Diggs, so we've got a high-end guy that he can rely upon. But man, wouldn't this thing work better if you had a pressure release, if you had a guy that you could give 15 to 20 touches every single week, pass or run. And Dev has always seemed to me like a really good back. He's like I would, as an opponent, sit on the other side and say, why isn't he used more? And thank goodness when he's not. He's a really good screen runner. He does blitz pickup pretty well. He's not just some sort of bit player. He's someone who I see could be highlighted more. And frankly, if you're a Patriots player, especially from a defense perspective, you're happy if they sort of abandon the Singletary stuff. You get a stop or two or three, in the first or second quarter, and you've convinced them to keep him under 10 touches for the day. That's a win. I think he's a really good player, an explosive player. But when I reference sort of the rollback stuff, there was a time where they couldn't make up their mind if it was going to be him or Zach Moss. And now often Zach Moss is sometimes inactive, or at least in a far, down the totem pole role, I guess. And then Matt, I always say this wrong.
Matt Breida.
I never get that right. But Matt is the track star, a little different. He's a straight line, toss play, hit him up the seam on sort of a middle read kind of stuff from a back. And he provides something different. But I really think Dev's kind of their do-it-all guy. And you sort of breathe a breath of fresh air kind of thing, or a relief, I guess is how I should say it, when he's not, when they don't put a lot on him. You're going to be thrilled, quite frankly, if Josh Allen drops back and throws it 45 times or something like that, and they've allowed it to go that way, because I think that the risk element goes up a little more. But if Dev's having a big day, he's getting lots of touches. They're getting 5, 6, and 7 yard chunks on the ground. It's probably not a good day for the Pats D.
Sounds pretty accurate. If Jalen Mills can't go, how are you running things in the secondary?
It's a great question, and it's something that we're probably all going to be sitting there, watching the pregame warmups, seeing how they align. The answer will be made, presumably in pregame. If you get out and you see Juwan Williams playing boundary, then okay, then it's going to be Juwan for the day. They have some other options. I know Miles Bryant is often thought of as slot corner guy. But they have the unusual thing that when Bryant missed a game, I believe it was Ross that came in and sort of performed very admirably. And sometimes people will look at Bryant as, because he's a slot guy, that he's a safety or slot. I think his body type, and I don't know his background well enough to know that he could play boundary throughout, but it appears that, from the outside anyway, that the choice here is Juwan, who's huge. It's a 6'3" corner, tall and long, but less sudden. But might be a nice matchup for a guy like Davis. Might be a better matchup for some of their guys, but not all of them. But if they want to go basically a second slot corner body on the field, you could see Ross and Bryant together. I presume, that we're going to get all of them up and active, because if for some reason Mills can't go, this is obviously using that presumption. If Mills ain't there, I think it's highly likely that we get both Brian and Ross. And Ross did a great job in his one sort of flash here. Had a pretty solid game throughout. Was sort of a non-issue. So they're both really good tacklers, and I think Juwan is a really good downfield player, but he's not as sudden, right? So if you're going to quick and fast, you don't want Juwan on him. But if you've got a bigger, taller, more powerful, depending on the coverage you run, he can get it done too. But I know the part that freaks fans out about Juwan Williams is like, oh, but they inactivate him a lot. What's wrong with him? I mean, I agree with that it makes you wonder what he's doing in practice that doesn't get him more work. But you'd be hard pressed to find, extensive film of him failing. He generally does a good job. He's not a guy who's out there getting burned. He's not when he's active. It's like, oh gosh, he got targeted 8 times and 7 catches on it and gave up 80 yards. Like, that's not on Juwan's resume either. He's just low usage. So I think they should feel comfortable with any of the 3, but which configuration they go with, we'll see on game day.
So move just a little further back in the secondary. What is Kyle Duggar's impact, and what role do you think he should play in this game?
So there's a couple different ways he'll be important, presumably. We have no way of knowing right now which coverage choices he'll make. The stuff they were doing in the tornado was distinct and different from what they tried here at home, much of which didn't work well because Josh, had his gold jacket day. I mean, he made so many plus throws. You tend to think that there's going to be a change from what we saw here in Foxborough. And the change, the toggling, I guess, of coverage approach usually kind of first affects that second, the other safety, the strong safety, or if he's playing sort of like a nickel linebacker role. The thing, again, from the outside we don't yet know is to what effect does the team believe whatever's going on with his hand limit him, or does it? Or is it just a casted thing and no big deal? He's going to go through and play and he'll be fine. Just he may not snatch a ball if it's thrown right to him, but every other part of tackling and getting past breakups and being able to reroute it is good to go. If that's the case, then this is a huge Kyle Duggar week, because it's really Kyle and or Adrian Phillips. If you have them both on the field at the same time, they're enough like one another that you have some symmetry. You can roll one down and keep one as more traditional. Both could do sort of the small guy box stuff. Dawson Knox is a solid tight end. Can definitely make plays. Struggled.
That's my next question.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. Well, he struggled. He struggled to catch the ball a little bit in the tornado, but who didn't? Even Diggs had his issues that day. So presuming that's a non-issue, Dawson's a legit. He's sort of bleeding answers in here, but Dawson is a legit issue. He's not someone you can fall asleep on. And that's kind of what's unique about the Bills, and maybe a little bit, maybe not so unique, similar to the Patriots. Sure, the Patriots don't have a Diggs, but the Bills have such a sort of widespread after that, where there's 5-ish guys here who can have big weeks. Emmanuel Sanders hasn't had many of these lately, but he's got some big pop stuff early in the year. Now you're into the playoffs. Do you rely heavily on the vet? You've got Beasley, who sometimes has huge weeks, sometimes is barely there. We know the Isaiah McKenzie story from last time. That was his big moment against the Pats. Do they go back to that? And in the event that they do, the Patriots play more split safeties, which really eliminates this whole idea of a guy going from slot to far sideline. The Patriots are playing a lot of single safety, so that required Miles Bryant to follow them all the way over, and that's a tough cover. If you want to prevent that, go split safeties, and that's back to your Kyle Duggar thing. He's got to play deep field, and then when those things cross the field, they get soaked up by the help. So it's a big deal to have him back. I mean, it's huge. But in the event that they don't, we're talking more about all those other defensive backs like Ross and Bryant and Phillips having to sort of shuffle around to fill the role.
Excellent. All right, we talked about Dawson Knox. I watch him play. I remember him in college. I mean, he played with DK Metcalf and AJ Brown and all of them at Ole Miss. Do you have a comp for him? Does he remind you of anybody, the way he plays the game?
I mean, like my era, I guess he's probably closer to a Fourier, in that he's not heavy. Like I don't have his numbers in front of me. He looks to me like a maybe 250 guy, but he's not a 265, 270. He's not a point of attack blocker. He's not like Lee Smith, who they used to have there, who was here for time prior to that. He's not sort of a, hey, if he's in and he's creating the strong side surface, that's the point of attack if they happen to be running it. Dawson kind of moves all over the place, catches a lot of crossing routes, is someone who does a good job of finding holes in sort of zone stuff, like knowing, when to zoom and sit. He also has, again, this is independent of the weather game, but you see him make some pretty athletic catches, some sort of bad ball stuff where he can adjust and high point it and do things like that. And he has a red zone role. But because Josh takes off and runs so much, not necessarily even to scramble, but to reset plays, and then there's a decent amount of recess, I guess. Dawson's a guy he finds a lot of that. Dawson's a guy that once the play resets and Josh is looking and he's outside the pocket or whatever, Dawson catches a lot of balls in that realm. So he's an important guy for them because tight end has always kind of been an area where they didn't necessarily have a pass threat. This is a fantasy football perspective if you do DFS, but he's also not a guy where you're reliably going to get 5 or 6 targets a week. And that's why, are you committing to take away the tight end? No, but don't fall asleep on him because he's a pretty good player.
What balance do you think Damian Harris and Stevenson give to each other and to the offense overall?
This is one of the biggest Patriots questions of the week. It may be like a top 3 or anyway, because the thing that I have in the back of my head is sort of a question mark. And again, I'm tying this in a little bit to DFS and the stuff that we do on Nesson and just guessing on how usage patterns are going to be. It's cold. We've beat that to death. It's going to be right around 0. But when one of the 2 backs has managed, healed from, and dealt with a hamstring, it's a little scary when it's that cold. Honestly, the best thing you can do for him to keep it from having a reissue, I guess, is keep moving. So one of the toughest things is if, and the coldest game reference I have is the Tennessee one in the AFC divisional years ago, whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that sucks isn't playing; it's standing and playing. You get tight. You as a special teams player, it's like stop, start, about every 2.5 minutes. Like it's really tough on the body. And I would imagine if you're a back in this situation, it's like, hey, we got studs at both spots, Harris and Stevenson. It could be tough on you if you have a hamstring, which you want to keep lubed up. You want to keep warm, and you want to keep rolling with it. If Harris has to go, a little 5-play sequence, and he sits for 20 minutes, and then Stevenson gets his role, and then Harris comes back in. Only thing I would want to know, and I shouldn't be guessing on this. I have no clue where Harris is at. Maybe he's completely past the point where he's concerned about it. But because he continues, I believe, to be listed on injury reports with it, it's not as if he's not still being treated for it a little bit. I would like to see Harris get lots of work and keep him at a point which doesn't overload it so he pulls it again, but also doesn't make him, freeze on the sideline. So my guess here is that if you're looking at splits, it's not so much 50-50. We're veering into the 60-40 or maybe 65-35 kind of range. But both are important. And, Stevenson's a guy who I could see scoring this week, could have a big play or two in the screen game, is really helpful as a sub runner because he hits it fast. Harris being sort of the more read it correctly, powerful, make guys run through tackles type guy. But it's good to have both. They've got a really good pair there.
On the other side, another pair, Poyer and Hyde. What did they allow the Bills to do up front, and are they really just a great deodorant for the rest of the defense?
Deodorant, that's one way to put it. I just like that they're similar enough to one another that you have symmetry there. Like you don't have like definitively this is going to be the spun down guy and this is going to be the high safety. Like they literally, you have to locate them each play. The Bills actually blitz the run a decent amount. I don't even know if it qualifies as a blitz, but they send a guy down in aggressively into a run read. You usually think of blitzes as things that come on passes to get sacks, but they're basically locate one of those 2 guys. It may actually be to the weak side, chasing something down as they send the whole line the other way, but you don't have a definitive read on which is which. We actually used to do that with Rodney Harrison. Rodney is the strong safety that everyone thinks of, but Rodney would switch it up with Eugene Wilson and just say, Gino, you're going down this time, and I'm going to take the middle of the field safety position, and it's a huge advantage, and it can confuse quarterbacks. So it could be confusing for young Mac Jones in that you can't definitively say, okay, there's Poyer, always the down guy. Hyde will always be high. There's my rotation. Now I go to sort of this is the beaters for the particular coverage I'm going to see that they show. You don't get that advantage of those guys because they're sort of interchangeable. So that's a good advantage to have as a defense. They're both really good players.
Aguilar and Jonnu, 2 free agent pickups.
Yeah.
What could they do now that they haven't done this season, or maybe something that Josh can scheme up to get them more involved to be contributors?
Yeah, I think Aguilar's in a tough spot because this offense has really migrated away from the stuff that he had a lot more success with in Oakland. I don't think he's played poorly by any measure. He's just in a limited opportunity. Although high route, his usage when prior to the injury or prior to being out, he was he would still be a high rep count guy, but his targets aren't anywhere near what he had seen before, best of my recollection anyway, back in Napkin. But I would say Aguilar's you're pleased with the contribution you get from him if he ends up with 2 to 3 either conversions for first downs or an explosive player. So, but I think he's been passed in sort of the usage realm by Kendrick Bourne.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're cheering too hard, especially on an offense that's only going to throw it 25 to 30 times, presuming they're ahead. If they're trailing, they get in the 40s. But if they're doing their thing and they're ahead of the count, they're running the heck out of the football, and they're working their play action stuff, you're not going to get an 8-target game for Aguilar. He's not going to be used that way, and he's not used that way. And if he is, they've most likely abandoned all that other stuff. So I wouldn't wish it upon him to do that, because then you're abandoning the style that I'm advocating for out of the other side of my mouth. So Aguilar is in an offense that doesn't throw it a ton, and not first read, but the favorite target guy is Myers, obviously. And the catch and run explosive guy is going to have a game plan play to him a couple times or a game is Kendrick. And I think he's earned that role. Aguilar is still, if you fall asleep, if you get the matchup you like, if you get a coverage rotation elsewhere, get him to it once, watch him roll, because he can fly. But we've seen a minimal role. I don't think it's because it's failed. I mean, it's a tough conversation because you got to be thrilled that Kendrick has ascended as he has. If Aguilar stayed high, we wouldn't see Kendrick doing what he's doing. So, pick your poison kind of deal. With Jonnu, on the other hand, Jonnu's a different story in that I have a hard time placing much blame on him for his production, because you only can play the role that you're given. And if you watch sort of usage patterns with these guys are really, really low with 12. Close to 12 personnel, the 2 tight end and just 1 back stuff. We spent all off season presuming, based on the expenditure there with him and Henry, that this is going to be the number 1 12 team in the league. We're going to see that's the new offense, and it hasn't been that. And it's not as if Jonnu had one game where we're going to go target him 8 times and see what happens, and he only got 2, and they learned, wow, we just can't lean there. He's really been used as a blocker. He has, and he has in the games. The splits have gone a little more heavily to Henry, and they play a good amount of 11 personnel, which I don't know if that'll hold up in a cold game, but if it does, Henry is more your sort of passing down guy. Jonnu, if they do have if they do have him on the field instead of Henry, you'll often see him as an extra protector, a check release guy that can be part of a check down, but he isn't being featured. So, if a guy was out in the pattern over and over again and you see Mac every time look them and he just ain't open, that's a failure. But that's not what I've seen out of Jonnu. Really high-end blocker, one of the better blocking tight ends in the league, and he's done that for them. But he's been reduced to sort of a role where there's a screen or a quick little sweep or some sort of game plan play that gets him involved in a given week. But other than that, in the sort of just normal course of things, he's going to get a target or 2 a game, and that's just kind of how it's been. The big change-up would be, hey, do run 12. Run a lot of it this week. Let's see what happens, and target both him and Henry in symmetry on either side. Get get Edwards moving, get Milano moving, and then turn back and target the tight end you don't as much. I think that would be great advice, but I don't know if Josh is going to go that way. But you're glad you have both those guys on the team, but I know they do definitely both have much lesser roles than people anticipated.
All right. The last one I have on this game, best pass rush plan versus Josh Allen?
It's a great question. So Josh is the unique kind of guy that can throw across his body, is pretty accurate even when you make him go left as a righty. But one of the things that I think fans that will recall back to the nightmare game there in Foxborough, when Josh just kept making plus throw after plus throw, even in times where the defense had drawn up a nice, they deal a great pressure. The pressure gets to him, and Josh just continues to give ground and then throws the dart. I've been joking about this all week. I think we could go back just over the course of the NFL season and look all the top throws. I mean, if you were to grab like the top 10 throws of the NFL season, I think Josh had like 3 of those in that game for the entirety of the league, not just for himself personally. 3 throws there that are just like, dude, can't be defended better. Rush can't be better, and he still got it off. So in saying that, you don't want him. You want to put him in the most comfortable position to make that throw, the most uncomfortable position. And if it's flush and back to his arm side, that's not ideal for a defense because at least you're in a more comfortable position to your right side. If you're going to be flushed, it's better to send them left. Although he has the ability to throw across his body, it's still always going to be a harder throw, especially when it's going to be a tough day to catch it. I mean, you're throwing a concrete ball here, and it's not even. I actually think in this environment, it's less difficult for the quarterback to get it there than it is to snatch it. You'll see guys that aren't normally body catchers become body catchers in the super cold because you're just trying to sort of cradle it and grab it. Because the thing is, again, it's just a concrete ball. I say all those things to say that they didn't have an aggressive rush pattern against him last time. You saw a lot of almost like not upfield past him, almost dance in front, get your hands up, and they killed him in that. So it's one thing to sort of keep them in the pocket, but you can't keep them in a pocket that's too large, right? You can keep him in the pocket, but the room has got to get small while he stays inside there. If you're at the line of scrimmage, as opposed to push maybe 3 or 4 in the backfield, that's not good enough. So they got to get better push into his lap. They've got to still continue to not do the upfield pass, but close the room a little better than they did last time. So maybe part of that is just having better personnel to do as much. Dietrich Wise, I think that was his COVID week where he didn't play the last time, and he's actually pretty good at, not really good because of his length, of pushing the pocket. Maybe not being the guy that gets the sack, but collapsing it to make Josh make the decision to leave. I think one of the biggest aspects here to wrap it up on the passer stuff would be, are they going to have Jamie or not? Jamie Collins, because I think the best guy on the roster is sort of a shadow to the pocket kind of guy. If you do want to flush him and have the guy to chase him down, that's probably Jamie. If he's not in that role, then maybe you're talking about Duggar on later downs. But Duggar might have a hand wrapped, and Josh is already a tough guy to both catch and get down. So I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily ideal, but you have lots of rush options and sort of rush patterns. They chose one last time. It didn't often work, but I'm excited to see how they do it this time. But at the end of the day, you just need to make it uncomfortable. If he makes a 10 out of 10 throw and you've made him uncomfortable, that's the best you can expect. Is he going to continue to make throws like that in 0-degree weather? Maybe 1, maybe 2, but not the 6 and 7 that he had in Foxborough.
All right, I got a couple of listener questions.
Okay.
Will Matt please come back? 1. And also, in the future, can we have smoker recipes with Matt as a segment on the Random Roundtable?
Right. It reminded me that I woke this morning, took the kids to school, started to get up and do my random sort of tasks and get into work stuff here a little bit. And I haven't yet set out the cut of meat that I'm going to do for tomorrow on Saturday because I'm going to travel to Foxborough, to Buffalo. So just be home here for Ness. And so I need to get on it. So you guys, as much as anything, you've encouraged me or reminded me I got to go get something out and get it brining and getting ready to roll for tomorrow.
Nice. So are you going as a fan? Are you going up to cover? Or?
No, I'm not going. I'll be. I'll be doing Nesson from here in Rentham.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, no, we normally do this trip. We were up there every year. You were on the team.
Okay. Awesome.
And just the weather tomorrow. And the prices are cheaper than normal.
Oh, yeah. Saw that. And you know what? I'm talking to some of the guys that are, newly retired or some of the older guys in the team now. This is just off-season conversations. But Buffalo Stadium has changed so dramatically in the underbelly, not necessarily with the fan seat portion, but they've done a number of upgrades there where Buffalo's locker room used to be one of the worst in football. I mean, it was terrible. It was just small, it was cold, it was dank. You just, and then the ramp that you go down feels like, like Wachusett kind of hill-ish, especially when you got, cleats on that are cold and frozen. But they've really revamped it. So it's actually pretty nice and comfortable back there now. It used to be the place that you just loathe to go to. Although when you're out on the field and in the environment, it's cool. But it's college. If you've done that trip many times, that's the one that feels like you're in a Big Ten game or something, more so than an NFL game. It just has that college-y kind of feel. But I'm excited for this one. It's cool that they get to go back there and do it. Of course, we preferred it to be here, but Buffalo is a good time.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to figure. They probably, when you were walking out, said a lot of nice things. Like, hey, Matt, how's the family?
Always, yeah.
Yeah, what are you doing with yourself this week? Stuff like that. That's what they say to people. Oh my God, some of the comments and words I've heard there are, just it's still 1978 there in some ways. So,
did we lose me?
I got you, Matt.
Something happened.
Can you hear me at all?
Technology, baby. I don't know what's going on.
Then we'll say bye.
See ya.
All right. That was Matt Chatham joining us. Sorry, Johnny Sunchips, your question was next, but we did talk about that. Great interview there. Got you guys set up, kind of a perspective. As we do the unsung sports grid here, that's what we are. Not asking the basic questions. Let's find out about the deeper things in a playoff game like this from somebody who's been in this situation before. But I'll give Matt a call in a few minutes and thank him, and we'll see if we can get some smoker recipes for everybody out there. That does sound exciting. I know Kim's licking her chops right now. She's new to smoking it, so up there in Canada, it actually keeps her warm too. So she'll definitely enjoy that. So I didn't get to go to Sunchips thing. Ma, yeah, I see he can't hear me. Stephanie, thank you so much. Everybody who listened, thank you very much. The next show tonight on Blog Talk Radio. Chips, if you want to send this to me quick, I believe you're at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock old school with Chips, Crow, and Joe. And they'll take you inside the classroom, get you ready. And when I sign off, first formation will already be on with Trey and Bishop. And they'll be breaking down the NFL weekend. And tomorrow, 11 a.m., me and MJ from the MGM podcast will be doing a preview show for the Saturday games. And we'll also have an 11 o'clock Sunday show. I'll be putting those in the hopper pretty soon. But thank you for your time. Again, like, subscribe, share, smoke signal, tell your friends, call them on the phone, call them on the house line, do something different. Call them on the house line and tell them. And just keep listening. We're going to keep building. We got some great talent here at this organization. I couldn't be more proud. All right, everyone. I'm going to turn you over to first formation. Have a great Friday. And remember, E2G Sports, the unsung sports grid.